Okay, welcome to the February 28th meeting of the City of Lowell License Commission. Was the meeting posted?
Yes.
Okay. First on the agenda,
Commission will now take up the matter of an application for public amusement licenses for Thomas McKay, Mill City Management, Inc., at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium at 50 East Merrimack Street. Two events show The Lord of the Dance, Wednesday, March 6th. It's 7:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. Also, there will be a show, Ron White, the comedian, for Friday, March 8th, from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m.
introduce yourself for the record.
Katrina Garavanian, Lowell Auditorium.
I have no issues with either one of these.
Neither do I.
No, okay.
For a minute, I thought it said snow Ron White, and I thought, I move we approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda,
Commission will now take up the application for a special one-day license for malt beverages and wine only, or either one. Louis G. Dimitriolakis,
You got it, Demetrolakis.
Esquire, for Saturday, March 16th. His request is to amend the hours starting at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. in lieu of 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. This will be an event at the Hellenic Cultural Center, 41 Broadway, and the event is the Hellenic Culture and Heritage Society. And also Richard Barrett of Kilkenny Pub for Sunday, March 17th, 3 p.m. to 12 midnight, at the 10 enclosed area of a parking lot adjacent to the Kilkenny Pub at 660 Rogers Street.
introduce yourself for the record.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you well, so.
Just say your name for the record.
Attorney Louis G. Demetrolakis. Go ahead.
Richard Barrett, Kilkenny Pub.
Okay, great. Attorney Dimitriopoulos, have you done this before?
Long ago.
Okay. Well, I'm sure with your reputation, you're aware of the rules and regulations of the License Commission.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just remember the license is in your name.
Correct,
Okay. You have complete control over the license.
correct.
All right? Mr. Barrett, how long have you been doing this?
This will be the 12th year.
Come to the microphone.
This is the 12th year.
Have we had any issues?
No.
No. Okay. I know I say this every year, but the traffic on Rogers Street is heavy, and there'll be a lot. I know you get a lot of people that day, so just make sure that, you know, it's people are crossing where they're supposed to cross, and you usually have a police officer, correct?
Yes, no,
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
okay. And the police have any comments?
No, we haven't had any trouble, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. If you guys have any questions.
No. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Good luck with your events.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrett, would you stay a second, please? With respect to
Question.
the Kilkenny
They mail
Pub,
that, question, I'm sorry, Ryan. Do they mail that license to me, or do I have to?
you'll have it in the mail tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, it'll be in the mail.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay. With respect to application for a special event permit for amplification of sound, Richard Barrett of Kilkenny Pub, 660 Rogers Street, sound system for band, disc jockey, St. Patrick's Day, Sunday, March 17th, from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. in a 10 enclosed area in the parking lot adjacent to Kilkenny Pub, 660 Rogers Street.
Introduce yourself for the record.
Richard Barrett, Kilkenny Pub, Lowell.
St. Patrick's Day is on a Sunday this year. Your establishment is in a residential neighborhood. You know, there's the apartments to the right of you, and there's houses, there's houses behind you. As we always say, the amplification is a common sense license. If they can hear it in the Highlands, it's too loud, okay? Be good to your neighbors. I know you are. So I don't know if you guys have any comments. If he can hear it at Christie's house, then we have an issue. That's the way we go.
How big is this tent?
30 by 60.
I don't think we've had any issues with you in the past for sound or anything.
I move acceptance.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
very much.
Commission will now take up applications for special one-day licenses, alcoholic beverages, all alcoholic beverages, filed by Fernando Souza of the Holy Ghost Society for events at Holy Ghost Park, 65 Village Street, starting with Saturday, March 2nd, from 12 noon to 1 a.m., a carnival, a rescheduling of an event that was postponed because of inclement weather, February 9th. Saturday, March 16th, from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. is the Sousa wedding reception. Saturday, March 23rd, 5 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. is the Holy Ghost fundraiser. Saturday, March 30th, from 5 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. is the Noite Catarina. Saturday, April 6th, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. is the Medina wedding shower. Saturday, April 13th, from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. is the Nelly Suite 15th. Saturday, April 20th, from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. is the Holy Ghost Queen's Ball. Saturday, April 27th, from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. is the Trinity Princess Ball. Saturday, May 4th, from 4 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. is a wedding reception. And last is Saturday, May 11th, from 5 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. is the St. John's Queen's Ball.
Introduce yourself for the record.
Fernando Sousa, President of Holy Ghost.
They're all inside events, Fernando?
Yes, all of them inside.
Fernando's been here, I know you've been here many times. We haven't had any issues that I can recall. If anyone has any questions.
No.
Alright.
Move acceptance.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Commission now take up the matter of an application filed by the Worthen House Cafe, Inc., the all-alcoholic beverage restaurant licensee at 141 Worthen Street, for change of manager from Nicholas Hamagas to Penny Hamagas of Dracut.
Introduce yourself for the record.
Penny Hamburgers, Worthen House Cafe.
Why are you changing managers, Penny?
Health issues.
Have you been the manager before?
I've been very active there for the past 12 years.
What has your role been in the last, I know you've been here many times, what has your role been?
I run the outdoor events. I do the scheduling, the ordering, interaction with the customers.
Have you served alcohol before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And you understand the rules and regulations of the License Commission in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Very well.
I have no issue with that.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye, so moved. Nicholas is the manager until it gets approved by the ABCC.
Sure, thank you.
Commission now take up the matter to do with an application by the Greater Lowell Buick GMC, Inc., Eleanor Moore, President, to amend its secondhand motor vehicles license Class 1 used car agent, which is license number 204-A, premises at 733 Roger Street, which been granted, the license presently is granted and issued for 2013 to the Greater Lowell Pontiac Buick GMC, Inc., Eleanor Moore, President. Request of the licensee to amend its corporate name for the no longer is recognized agent for Pontiac.
Introduce yourself for the record.
Eleanor Moore?
The death of Pontiac?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a very sad thing.
Yes. No more Firebirds. I have no issue. I don't know if you guys.
Neither do I.
No. I move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
This is gonna be a tough one. Mr. Gee. Commission will now take up the matter to do with an application for the second-hand articles license by Edward Ramirez Grulon, doing business as New to You, 244 High Street. Licensee presently is Angel A. Kulan, doing business as New to You Thrift Store. His license expires April 30, 2013.
Introduce yourself for the record.
Angel Quillen.
Edward Almeida.
Okay.
Does this license require U.S. citizenship like a alcohol license?
No, the citizen's not required, but what's important to understand is that we have a city ordinance regarding how a licensee for secondhand articles should conduct the business. And one of the primary concerns of any licensee should be making sure the Lowell Police Department are made aware of any and all items that they may purchase from a customer, prospective customer, and properly recording the particular items and submitting that documentation to the Lowell Police on a daily basis. Mr. Goulon, in my conversation with Mr. Goulon and with Mr. Kulian, who's the present licensee, is that one of the problems with Mr. Goulon, in my conversation with him, is that he was not able to understand the English language spoken. And it's my understanding also that he may not be able to read the city ordinance in English. I made an attempt to try to make available a Spanish version of the city ordinance by way of the city's access to Google. I'm not so sure I was successful in doing that, but I knew that in speaking with Mr. Coulon the other day and Mr. Goulon and Kulian, that they could possibly manage the website in such a way that they could possibly read the Spanish version of the city ordinance.
Is there a transition plan that can be put in effect where you, the police, work with Mr. Kulian and Mr. Goulon for a few days, a week or so, to make sure that we have the muscle memory so that this all works?
Mr. Goulian, have you met with the Lowell Police?
No, sir. But also, I mean, before, like, I was speaking to the gentleman, okay? All the rules and regulations, I explained to him and I translated all in Spanish. So as much as my understanding, and he understood all the rules and regulations. And I also, told him how everything is. We tried to, download it from the website too, and it was not locked at all. But the gentleman is very interesting. He's even willing to take a class to learn how to speak English very well. Plus his girlfriend speaks English very well. She's gonna be there with him to helping him. And his father, he speaks 50-50 too, so, all this helps.
Captain Webb, do you have any Spanish-speaking police officers in the force?
Yes, if the present license holder would like to come down to the police station and speak to Detective Kelly, who I'm sure he deals with on a regular basis, we can make a Spanish-speaking detective available to him who can explain the regulations.
Okay. That's our concern, and I think the last person that came in for a secondhand license before Commissioner Krieger was here, Commissioner Delaney and I wanted them to demonstrate that they were aware of the rules and regulations, that they met with the City of Lowell Police Department, that they knew how to log any items that were taken in and to contact the police if there were any issues. So I would feel more comfortable if we went through that process again. You know, some people do it before the hearing, some people. So I'd like you to get in touch with the Lowell Police Department, sit down, go through the regulations. Captain Webb said that a Spanish-speaking detective will be made available. So if you have any questions, they can answer them. They can ask you some questions to see if you ascertain the rules and regulations. So I'll make a motion that we continue this hearing until March 14th, 2013.
Is there any specific time that we can go and speak to them, or any given time, tomorrow or something?
Well, I think you gotta call them.
I just call them? Okay. Okay, thanks, sir.
So I'll make a motion that we continue this to March 14th, 2013.
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda,
Commission now open a hearing on the allegation of misconduct discharged by Kenneth E. LaValle, the Superintendent of Police, against Bex Inc., DBA Brian's Ivy Hall, 74 Merrimack Street, Kevin Hayhurst, manager of record, the all-alcoholic beverage restaurant licensee, alleged that Lowell police were not notified of the assault on the licensed premises of a patron the morning of January 1st, 2013.
before this hearing begins, I'd just like to put on record that I have filed a public disclosure that there is no conflict of interest between myself and the attorney representing Bex Inc., Raymond Weicker. Mr. Weicker served on this commission with me, but we have no other relationship that would give rise to any unfair treatment with that.
And for the interest of public disclosure, I'll also put out that I currently serve on a board with Commissioner Krieger with Operation Returning Veterans. I don't think we've actually attended 2 of the same meetings, but we both do sit on the same board, and it works in conjunction with the Lowell Housing Authority to provide homes for veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Good evening. My name is Raymond Weicker. I'm here on behalf of my client, which is Bex Inc., by and through its president, Mr. Kevin Hayhurst, who's here with me.
Would you like the complaint read into the record?
It's not necessary.
Captain Webb, could you just summarize the complaint?
Mr. Chairman, on January 1st of this year, at approximately 2 a.m., Officers Luganis and Daigle were on patrol in the downtown area in front of 74 Merrimack Street. They were flagged down by a female patron of Brian's Ivy Hall at that address and were told that there was a large fight upstairs in the club. The officers entered the stairway to go up to the club. They dispersed a group in the stairwell on the way up. Upon reaching the club, they found that there had been a disturbance inside the club between 2 males. They also observed that club employees exhibited signs of injury and torn clothing. Check of the police department records indicates that no call was received from Brian's Ivy Hall to the police station reporting the disturbance. Officer Luganis and Mr. Willett, who is the Director of Communications for the police department, are present if you'd like to hear from them.
Okay. Is the police officer here? Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Officer Nick Luganis.
All right, Nick, can you tell us what happened, or Officer Luganis, can you tell us what happened?
Yes, we were stationing ourselves outside, just outside of Brian's Ivy, near the corner of Merrimack and John Street, where we were flagged down by a female that came out of Brian's Ivy that relayed to us that there was a fight going upstairs. That's when we called it into dispatch, and then myself and Officer Daigle went upstairs to see what was going on.
Okay, and what happened when you went upstairs?
As we're going upstairs, there was a small fight on the stepways going upwards around the corner. Turns out that wasn't part of the incident. They were sent on their way without incident. Went upstairs, and the fight was already broken up at that point. So basically, we just got everyone's story.
And what time was this at?
I want to say approximately 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, and how many people were in the establishment?
I can't give you an exact answer, but I could say approximately 30 to 40.
30 to 40 people were in the establishment at 2 a.m.
Employees as well as the complainants. So they stayed upstairs as well.
Okay. I don't have any questions for the officer. I don't know if you...
What's the capacity, do you know?
I do not. I believe around 400. 456.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Does the city have any questions for the officer?
Yeah, I have a few questions, if that would be.
Yeah.
Officer Luganis, when you entered Brian's Ivy Hall, can you please indicate your observations at the stairwell?
At the stairwell, there was approximately, I want to say, about 5 people just around the corner near the coat area. There was a little skirmish, some pushing, some shouting. After speaking with them for a brief moment, we determined that that wasn't the fight that the female was speaking of. They were sent on their way. They agreed to leave.
And what did you observe when you entered Brian's Ivy Hall?
When we entered Brian's Ivy Hall, the fight had already been broken up. They were split apart by the employees and the bouncers. And I believe one of the individuals involved in the fight was an employee as well, with the person who wanted to file charges, who wasn't an employee. He was a patron for the night.
Can you describe the appearance of the people in Bryant's Ivy Hall? Were there any observable injuries?
I can't say as far as injuries go or hurt, but it did look like there was a scuffle. There was marks on some faces and some ripped shirts on the bouncers from trying to break up the fight, it seems, from what I was told.
Were any charges filed?
Yes, there was.
Please describe those charges.
Simple assault and battery on both parties. I wasn't able to physically see what had happened, so at that point, their summons to court.
Did the parties talk to you?
Yes, they did.
What did they say?
One side, there was two kind of different stories from both of them. One side stated to me that he was attempting to get his girlfriend away from a large fight that was going on. As he did, he was struck in the face by what turned out to be one of the employees. The employee stated that a completely different story. He was just breaking up the fight, and that was that. So,
Thank you, officer.
thank you.
Captain Webb, was the police department ever notified of this disturbance?
Records indicate that no calls were received about this disturbance.
Okay. Attorney Weicker, you have any questions for? You can just move to the microphone.
Just ask, the two individuals that were involved, you got both of their names down in the report, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you said that the bar staff had actually broken up an altercation between the two of them, or it appeared that they had?
From what I was told, yes.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene, nobody had left, they had actually had everybody there?
They stayed, yes.
Okay. So they had them there and you were able to talk to them and do an investigation?
That's right.
Okay, so no information was lost to law enforcement?
From what was told to us.
Okay. And the time lapse between when you were notified outside and when you were able to get up
When we
there?
went inside, it was right away, I want to say not even a minute.
Okay. And you were able to radio that in that you were going in, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So you did receive notice?
From the female, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Who did you receive notice from?
A female that came out,
Was she an employee of Bryant's Ivy Hall?
patron,
She was a patron?
yes.
Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I got the impression from your testimony that there was a preceding fight, and when you got there, that had ended, and it was just down to,
From what I seen in the stairway, is that?
no, when you got up onto the main floor.
Oh, yes,
That
that's,
there had been a larger scuffle,
from what I gathered from everything, that's where everything began, yes.
and you were just cleaning up the peripheral fights.
For the most part, sir, yes, the fight was already broken up, so.
Thank you.
Okay, does the police have anybody else that you hear from?
Mr. Willett from the communications section is here if you would like to have him testify due to the lack of call. If
Sure, where's Mr. Willett?
If it'll save time, we'll stipulate that no call was made, that the
Sure.
notification was verbal.
Okay, that's fine. Do you have anything to add? You're all set, officer.
Oh, no, sir.
Yeah.
The city would like the officer just to testify that the communication was not received by the police department. We'd like to make that clear on the record, that the police did not receive a communication from Bryant's Ivy Hall regarding the fight. We just want to make sure that that's clear in the stipulation.
Attorney Weicker, we're stipulating that there was no call relative to this fight from Bryant's Ivy Hall or any of their employees, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and we'll put, that's on the record?
That is on the record.
Thank you.
Yep.
I've submitted some information to you. I'd ask if you'd prefer any live testimony. If you would, I can at least bring to you the first individual who encountered the assailant on the stairs. If you'd like to hear from Mr. McCarthy.
Sure. Introduce yourself for the record.
Jeff McCarthy, bartender at Bryant's Ivy Hall.
All right, what happened, Jeff?
So I was outside. We all help out to clear the whole place out. I was outside, and when I walked back in, there was an individual that was punching the wall. So I talked to him for a couple minutes, just asked him, you know, what's going on. He stated that he's a Marine, part of the military, don't talk to him. So I said, okay. So I told him it was time to go, and, you know, he told me he's looking for his girlfriend. So I said, I will go upstairs and, you know, notify your girlfriend that you're looking for her. So I went upstairs, you know, we found his girlfriend. She was talking to, appeared to be two of her friends. And then next minute, the officers came up, and they asked me if there was any problems, and I said that no, there was no fight. So I don't know why they were notified that there was a fight when pretty much there wasn't.
But you did say that you talked to a Marine that was punched, correct?
That was what?
Didn't you say he was struck, or?
No, he was punching the wall.
He was punching the wall.
He punched the wall, correct.
Okay.
And that's what got my attention to go back upstairs, which he was by himself with, I don't know, I think probably one friend, I think it was.
You guys have any questions?
So, yes. I just want to be clear, your testimony is there was no fight in the stairwell, and there was no fight at any time on the main floor.
That's correct.
But you were outside, correct?
For maybe a minute time span.
And then you went back inside to look for this person, and you didn't observe any fights?
Correct.
Okay. Does the city have any questions?
Yes. Just to be clear, where were you prior to 2 o'clock at Bryans Ivy Hall? Where were you stationed?
Behind the bar.
Where were you?
2 o'clock as in all night, or
Where were you all night on the premises?
a bartender?
And where were you stationed in Bryans Ivy Hall?
Behind the bar.
Behind the bar.
Yes.
At what time did you say you went outside of the premises?
1:40.
And when did you come in?
I'd probably say between 1:40 and 1:45.
So you were outside at the time the alleged fight occurred?
Do you want to rephrase that?
So you didn't observe anything inside Bryans Ivy Hall when you were outside, is that correct?
For at tops, 2 minutes I was outside, correct.
Thank you, no further questions.
Okay. Do you have any questions of the?
Just to be clear, was the guy who was punching the wall the one who came rushing into the establishment?
Yes.
Was he one of the ones that's criminally charged?
Yes.
Okay. The individual that was punching the wall?
Yes.
Okay. Was the other person that he was charged with, was he an employee?
No.
All right, do you know his name?
Yes.
Okay. And for the record, what is his name?
Orlando Aponte.
Okay. And do you know Orlando Aponte?
Correct.
Has he been at your establishment before?
Yes.
Okay. But he's not an employee?
Correct.
Anybody else have any questions of Mr. McCarthy?
Okay, so reading the paper presented by Mr. Weicker, there was an incipient fight, though, you would agree, right? Because Mr. Robbins charged back up the stairs to retrieve his girlfriend?
Yeah, that's why he went back up, yes.
And somebody felt the need to restrain Mr. Robbins?
Which was me.
Okay.
Can I just ask, how long did you have him restrained before the police arrived?
Couple minutes.
did anything happen during the time that you had him restrained?
No.
And did you turn him over to the police when they arrived?
Yes.
Did you in any way permit him to engage in a fight?
No.
Why were there still people on the premises at 2 AM?
Is that a question to me?
To anybody from Brian's Ivy Hall?
Kevin Hayhurst, Brian's Ivy Hall. The whole thing started is we couldn't remove them. We were having a problem moving them, and we asked the police to assist us to move them. That's exactly what happened.
What police
That was the
officer did
extent
you
of the. We had our door lady, which was Colleen Finn. She asked them to help us. She could hear us in the hallway having problems removing patrons, and that's why she asked them to come upstairs. When they came up, asked them to move, and then there was no brawl upstairs. We were asking patrons to leave, and they wouldn't leave. There was nothing we could do. They just refused to leave. So we asked the Lowell police to help us. We appreciate their help, but then I don't know how it turned into this situation. There was no altercations up there. The rip shirt was actually my rip shirt where they're trying to say, and I had nothing to do with this incident at all. So we were asking for assistance to help us clear the people out. And there was only a handful of people like Officer Lagana stated.
Can you just, for the record, please explain to the License Commission how many employees you have working at the end of the night?
There was probably that night, I guess there would have been 10 bouncers, 4 bartenders, odds and end waitresses, probably another handful.
And someone testified there were only 30 people left at the, how many people did you have that? It was New Year's Eve, right?
That fight that would have been New Year's Eve, yeah.
Yeah, how many people did you have that night?
Patrons?
Yeah, patrons.
Possibly 350.
Okay. And how many were, say, there at 1 o'clock?
That usually would be our peak, around 350.
Around 350. Okay, how about at 1:30, how many were there?
Would have been the same.
Okay. How about 1:45, how many were there?
5. When we turn our lights on and shut the music off, people leave instantly. There's no more reason for them to be there. There's no serving alcohol. There's nothing. They actually just pretty much leave on their own. That's why at this incident, when there was a few people in the hallway that were refusing to leave, is why this would have happened.
Does the city have any questions for Mr. Hayhurst?
A few questions. So you indicated to the commission that you weren't able to clear out your establishment at 2, is that correct?
Everything was clear except for the handful of people that were left and refused to leave, correct?
Why did they refuse to leave?
I'm not sure. They were probably just didn't want to leave. They were a group together. They were just being social and just didn't want to move.
Why couldn't your employees get them to leave?
We probably could have, but to stop any kind of physical problems, we actually asked the police to help us. I mean, besides being physical with them, they wouldn't take a verbal commands to leave, so without us getting physical with them, we asked the local police to help us out.
But you didn't call the police?
They were present. They were actually right at the bottom of the stairwell, like Officer Lagana stated. They were standing right as there. So one of our employees asked them to help us, to assist them to get them out.
And what is the name of this employee?
Colleen Finn.
Is she present?
She's not. She's actually working right now.
No questions.
And just for, she's not working at your establishment right now, correct?
No, she's not. She's actually working with the Draco Police.
Do you have any questions? Any questions? No. Do you have any statements you want to make, Attorney Walker?
Commissioners, I just have one last question for the employee. Sir, why did you have to restrain the Marine?
Because I saw him punching the wall.
And why was he punching the wall?
He wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't talk to me because he was a Marine, which I stated.
Again, though, why did you have to restrain him if he wasn't attacking anyone?
Because he was punching the wall, and once I was telling him it's time to go, and he wants to go back upstairs, I think it just kind of makes sense to.
So given his
just try to restrain him. So I don't know why you were punching the wall.
So given his aggressive behavior, you felt it necessary to restrain him.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
No questions.
Does the Brian's Ivy Hall want to make any final statements?
I would simply ask the commission to consider that the purpose in notifying the police The rule requires that it be either by phone or otherwise. The officers were present, they were stationed right downstairs outside. They were immediately told that there was a problem, immediately came in. Look, nobody can guarantee the behavior of a few individuals. And if the standard is that any individual can wander into any establishment, misbehave, and the establishment should be punished for the individual, well, then I guess it's a matter of playing Russian roulette with who walks in the door that night. But testimony, and even from both law enforcement and the people who were working, was that everybody who was alleged to be involved in anything was present. No information was lost. Proper restraint was shown. You had an individual who was somewhat disturbed, waiting for his girlfriend, trying to get back into the club, and punching a wall, and a request for assistance was made. And the bottom line is the bar staff had two choices. They could either take the law into their own hands and throw people out physically, or they could request assistance. They did the right thing, and they requested assistance. They put themselves in a situation where they're now being brought in. And I would just ask that the commission consider that Rule 25 goes on to state that notifying the police should not be used as a basis for punishing them. And here, we're stipulating there was no phone call made because the people were already present right at the bottom of the stairs. I would ask that the commission endorse the idea that establishments should have somebody run out and get a cop if there's trouble inside. I think it's in everybody's best interest that we don't have bouncers playing vigilante, that we don't have people doing a, for lack of a better term, Wild West scenario of throwing them out the saloon doors. The right move is to go get a cop, bring them in, let them figure out why they're not going, and disperse them. And that's exactly what happened. It happened on the stairs with just a few words. There were some people pushing and shoving, and as Officer Laganis said, with a few words, he was able to disperse them, and they left without any incident. When he got inside, there were people making allegations back and forth. The bar staff had restrained one individual who had been aggressive, and within minutes, the police were up there after stopping to deal with the situation on the stairs. Of the 30 people that were present, 20 of them are accounted for as having been employees and security and other staff, and one large group that refused to leave. So that comes down to, do they take the law into their hands? Do they start throwing people out? Or do they simply hold on to them so that information isn't lost, get the police involved, let them investigate, make a determination, and assist in the prosecution? And I think that they've done the right thing. They did hang on to them. They didn't let anybody get away. They didn't help anybody escape. They didn't permit an illegality to happen and then hush them out the back door and let things go. They did the right thing. So I believe that they shouldn't be punished for that. And I would ask that the commission think similar lines.
Does the city have anything?
Well, it's all well and good, but Bryan's Ivy Hall did not do the correct thing because they didn't contact the police when there was a clear disruption and illegality that occurred at the premises. Now, the party stipulated that no call was made, no contact was made to either the police.
No, objection. We stipulated that no phone call was made.
Very well, no phone call was made to the police. There was no contact, however.
Objection, that's not our
Just
stipulation.
let him talk and then we can figure it out.
The police officer and the police officer testified that he entered the premises, he observed the fights, he noticed that there were fights in the stairwell and a fight that appeared to have been broken up inside the premises, that the appearances of the parties there were abrasions and there was ripped clothes. The officer testified as to a description of what he appeared to be a fight in the premises, and the officer has experience as a police officer, and you must take that into account. I also note that Bryan's Ivy Hall claims that the female that flagged down the police was an employee. But I think it should be noted for the record that this employee is not present here and is not able to testify in regards to the fact. Therefore, I believe that the officer's testimony is clear that this was a patron. He indicated as such that she identified herself as a patron, and that in accordance with Rule 25, there was no contact made to the police in regards to an illegality that was occurring on premises. And therefore, the city believes that disciplinary action should be made in that case.
Did the, Officer Leganis, can you come back up for a second? Did you witness a fight?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Not the fight in question.
Yeah, you didn't witness.
The stairwells are different.
You didn't witness any fight?
No.
Okay. And the person that informed you of the disruption, for lack of a better term, she identified herself as a patron?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And did you ever seen her before?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you know who Colleen Conlon is?
Conlon?
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Okay. And that's who.
Finn?
Do you know her maiden name, Colleen Finn?
Yes.
Was it Colleen Finn that informed you?
No, it was not.
Okay. Okay. It was a different individual.
It was, yes.
It's okay.
Just, were there any other officers working with you that night?
Yes, it was.
And
Who was that officer?
Officer Mike Daigle?
Is Mike here?
No, he's not.
Okay. All right.
Somewhere I thought I read in some report that there were 2 women on the street. Is that right?
I'd have to refer back to my report, sir, but I can only remember one. As far as who...
That
advised
approached
us,
you and said there's a fight upstairs.
I'd have to refer to my report, but I can remember one.
Mr. McCarthy, my question is, how did you know there were police down on the street that you could dispatch someone to?
Say that one more time, please.
How did you know there were police down on the street that you could send someone down to get?
I didn't.
It was just taking a chance.
Correct.
Are there normally police downstairs at closing time?
Every single night. About 10 of them.
There were police every single night at closing time outside
Correct.
your establishment?
Okay, every night.
Just for the record, how many establishments that serve alcohol are located within a 1-block radius on that strip of Merrimack Street? If you know.
2, 3, 4, 5. I'd say 8 that I could say.
All right, I don't know how the commissioners feel about the testimony, your thoughts or feelings.
I think the point about dispatching someone down is a little confused actually, but it's a good move to send someone down. But it does seem with that many employees present, someone could have picked up the phone simultaneously and attempted a second method of communication.
Captain Webb, is it a regular occurrence that the Lowell police are stationed for bar break in that area? Or is it just if there's available officers, they'll swing by, or?
Due to the difficulty at closing time with all of the establishments downtown, on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings, there is a extra patrol that is put on, and the purpose of this patrol is to monitor the various establishments and to assist with crowd control. I can't say that they're stationed outside of Brian's Ivy Hall every night, but I'm sure they're frequently there. And I don't dispute Mr. Hayhurst's statement that they're there every night, but I don't think that's the only post that they're at.
I mean, there are several bars in the city, so I wouldn't make that assumption that someone's gonna be right outside the door. I would encourage the employees to call rather than walk outside.
And Commissioner, I agree with you. One of the conversations I've had with my client is that because you get in the situation of, do you yell for the police or do you pick up the phone and call to establish a record? Well, when you're coming into these proceedings, it's nice to have a phone log of a call. It's great. But sometimes people think it's faster to run out and flag somebody down because That's the person that's going to ultimately end up being dispatched anyway once you're patched through. If you call 911, you've got to get patched through from state police back to Lowell. And if you dial direct, you've got to lay out everything that's going on rather than just wave down and say, hey, there's something going on upstairs, I need help.
Yeah, I mean, but he's saying there's 10 people there for bar breaks, so I can assume that maybe you could send one person down and make a phone call, seeing as we've had this same issue before with calling the police, and I just hope that in the future, whatever we decide, I mean, you make it clear to your employees that just pick up the phone. It's in your best interest to just make the call and send someone outside.
And I think that we had a hearing, a similar hearing, not too long ago. And I think that was it was after this incident, but I think it was the same situation where Brian's Ivy Hall informed the police that were were patrolling rather than calling the police, and we instructed them that in the future, they should call the police. Have there been any incidents since January 1st where you've called the police?
No, there hasn't been any incidents, and I didn't really think there was a reason to call that night because it wasn't an incident. We were just trying to remove people. There was, like everyone has stated, he didn't witness a fight, he didn't witness a fight, we didn't witness a fight where I should have called. We were just asked, we were trying to remove people from the hallway. I didn't think I needed to call for that, that's all. We've had no incidents since, no.
That being said, I think that the Lowell police would have no problem, even if there weren't a fight, just to come into the establishment and help you remove patrons who are there beyond 2 a.m. I mean,
Like Mr. McCarthy said, they're there every night. There's a handful of police at least outside every single night. Every night they're open at Brian's Ivy Hall, they're outside.
Okay.
Lights on, everything, there's a few cruisers, they're always there.
I just think maybe to establish a good rapport, and maybe in the future, if you do have trouble removing people, even just call them.
They're always welcome, and we can call every night at closing. That's okay.
I guess my concern is that there's a confusion as to who notified the police. You guys say it was a patron, you have an affidavit, an employee, there's an affidavit here signed by the employee that she notified, but then the police who knows this individual says she wasn't the one that told them, it was someone else.
And look, there are other police officers that were working that night. I regret that I couldn't have her here. She does work for the Drake Police Department. She is on shift now. She's not available to come in and testify. That's why I had anybody who I thought might not be available come in and prepare affidavits in advance. So I would just ask that, the commission consider that where there were multiple people working, where there's several officers that were outside that evening, where more than one officer was able to respond to the scene. It is possible that more than one person made a statement to the police. It's possible that a patron said, hey, there's a group that's rowdy on the stairs, we need assistance. We don't dispute the possibility. We don't know that for a fact. We don't know who that person was. That person's not identified. We had no means of contacting this person. It's an unidentified person who made a statement to one officer, and you've got a person who was working security who said that they made a report to an officer. So where that's happening and where there was a problem and the request was for assistance in getting people out, it's not a situation where we had people who were left bleeding, untreated, people who were being thrown out, assailants were not being snuck out. The staff did what they should do. They held on to everybody until the police came. If there was an altercation, the police didn't lose any information because they were able to speak to the people who were alleged to be involved. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Do you hold on to people and say, I need the police here, and run the risk that you're injured for not phoning, but instead yelling for help, or not? And I think the best move is to request the assistance in any event, one way or the other. Yeah, I would say, bad that they didn't call, good that they made notification otherwise.
Does the city want the last word?
I did call earlier that night, too.
I think to make it clear, though, no call was made. And if there was no alleged fight, why were complaints filed with the police officer? Why did Officer Leganis testify that he observed abrasions and evidence that, in his professional opinion as a police officer, constituted fight? And why is it that, despite Brian's Ivy's Hall claim that an employee came out and flagged a police officer, Officer Leganis testified that the person identified herself as a patron. There was no communication between Brian Zivenhall and the police as required under Rule 25. And thus, disciplinary action is warranted in this case.
You had a question?
Yeah, Officer Leganis, so both of these individuals did file criminal complaints?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It was a cross complaint for both of them.
So I think aside from any evidence of abrasions and so forth, I think the fact that Officer Leganis has stated that these two individuals were willing to, who both, as you're stating, filed criminal complaints, that there was a fight between the two of them that occurred in the bar.
From what was told to me, yes.
How have these criminal complaints been resolved, do we know?
I haven't had notification from the court just yet, so.
I have no information on that.
So no hearing scheduled yet? You haven't gotten anything?
Not that I'm aware of, ma'am, I haven't got any notification, so.
Well, I think, I think this is why we're, if you were here between 5 and 6:30, we went over notifying the police department and how it needs to be done in the future. I think you guys have been in business long enough where you know that a phone call is always the best policy. I know you testified that you didn't think there was an incident.
Can I actually make a statement too? Not only do I know that rule, I actually called earlier in that night because I had patrons that were trying to come in that were intoxicated. I wouldn't let in physically. And you can ask one of the officers that responded is here. I've called earlier in that night because I understand this rule. I did make a call. They did show up, and the problem was already resolved at that point. There, I thought there was an issue. I made the call because I thought it was the right move. This incident, I didn't think there was an issue.
Did they call earlier in the night? Is there any log of that?
I didn't examine the CAD records for earlier that evening. I wouldn't dispute Mr. Hayhurst's
Called earlier, right.
But again, they stipulated that no call was made in regards to this
I
incident.
understand.
For the record, it's Officer Hodgson who was the one who had been called earlier in the night when the intoxicated individuals were turned away from the door.
I don't know if you guys have any recommendations as to how you want to proceed.
Well, I think that partly it's tied up in how do we deal with the next incident, but I think some action needs to be taken, whether we suspend it or not, I'm not sure. But it's commended for having someone go down the stairs, but not making the phone call, I think, was a wrong decision, and to not take note of that sends the wrong signal to everybody.
I'll make a motion that that there was a violation of Rule 25, refusing to, or neglecting to contact the Lowell Police Department. We suspend the license for 1 day, and we hold it in abeyance for 3 months.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Next on the agenda.
Okay. Number 9 on our agenda, the hearing, Commission will now open the hearing on the allegation of misconduct as charged by Kenneth E. LaValle, Superintendent of Police, against Beck Sink, doing business as Brian's Ivy Hall, 74 on Merrimack Street, Kevin Hayhurst, manager, the all-alcoholic beverage restaurant licensee. alleged report of disturbance that occurred on licensed premises on December 21st, 2012, and of Lowell Police having to respond 16 times in calendar year 2012 for fights or disturbances, plus 6 calls to be answered for loud music complaints.
Good evening again. My name is Raymond Weicker from Quahl, Harvey & Walsh. I'm here on behalf of Bex Inc., by and through its president, Mr. Kevin Hayhurst. I would just ask for one clarification. When I received the letter, I didn't see that there was any complaint of any wrongdoing on behalf of Bex Inc., and that this was more for informational purposes. And I know that if there's an issue with respect to general nuisance law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 139, deals specifically with how to proceed in those instances where it deals with a licensed establishment. It requires a certain modicum of proof beyond the hearsay. I would also ask that we put on the record and establish clearly that there is no penalty for calling the police to respond to incidents as set forth in Rule 25.
There's no penalty for calling the police.
Thank you.
Put that on record. There's a penalty for not calling the police.
I think we went over that, but thank you.
Would you like the complaint read into the record?
No.
Captain Webb, could you summarize the incident?
Mr. Chairman, on December 20th, of 2012, the police department learned that a rap artist by the name of Keith Cozart, who was also named Chief Keef, was scheduled to perform at Bryans Ivy Hall at 74 Merrimack Street. Intelligence had been received from the Boston Police Department indicating that numerous gang associates were expected to attend. Sergeant Jafrida was assigned to visit Bryans Ivy Hall that evening to discuss this information. At about 8:44 p.m., he went to Bryans Ivy Hall and he met with Dimitrios Papoulias, who identified himself as the Director of Operations for Bryans Ivy Hall. Sergeant Jafrida learned that 300 to 400 people were expected. People over 18 were going to be admitted, and the sergeant discussed security measures and our concerns with Mr. Papoulias. During the evening, officers were assigned to visit Bryans Ivy Hall to check the club and the surrounding area. At 12:02 a.m. on the 21st, Officer Lorenzi made an arrest for disorderly conduct inside of the club, and at 12:40 a.m., Officer Gatto made another arrest for disorderly conduct. At 1:15 a.m., officers were present inside the club to monitor the closing. Again, they found approximately 300 to 400 patrons inside. About 100 patrons were on the stage at that time, and the officers saw that they were refusing to get off the stage. At one point, one of the performers on the stage started throwing ice into the crowd. Fights broke out. Officers attempted to clear the crowd and restore order, and they were not able to. They were not able to quell the disturbance, and supervisory officers called for mutual aid. Mutual aid responded from Dracut, Tewksbury, Tingsboro, Billerica, UMass Lowell, and the Massachusetts State Police. The disturbance spread to the surrounding streets outside the club, and order could not be restored for an hour. 6 more arrests were made for charges including disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and assault and battery on police officers. Due to this large disturbance and the resulting calls for assistance, large portions of the city were left without police protection, and police officers were put at risk quelling the disturbance. In addition to this particular disturbance, during the calendar year 2012, officers responded to this location approximately 16 times for fights or disturbances and an additional 6 times for loud music. Almost all of these responses were between the hours of 1 and 2 a.m. Sergeant Jafrida, Lieutenant Hodgson, Sergeant Peasley, and Officers Loganis, Rojas, and Papa Constantino are here this evening.
If it would help from an administrative perspective, could we clarify how many of those actions or how many of those calls were initiated by Bex Inc. that the police department responded to calls from?
I examined the CAD records for these calls, and the vast majority of the calls were officer-initiated, and I don't recall right now seeing that any of these calls were initiated from inside the bar.
Okay.
And when you checked the inside the bar, did you go through everybody's cell phone records, or did you go through the 911 relays?
I didn't examine the telephone numbers to see who they came back to.
Okay. So if they would come through the state police relay system, that would be listed as an officer initiated?
No, if it came through the state police, that would only be a 911 call, and it would indicate that it had been received from the state police 911 center.
And of these incidents, how many did you file any petitions under Chapter 139 for a nuisance? How many lawsuits have been initiated?
None to my knowledge.
Okay.
Is Officer Jafrida here? Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Michael Jafrida, I'm a sergeant with the Lowell Police Department.
Can you describe what happened on the evening of December 20th?
Yes. Under the direction of my commanding officer, I was to proceed to Brian's Ivy Hall, where I was to meet the person in charge of the event that evening concerning some information that we had.
Okay, and when you arrived at Brian's Ivy Hall, what did you observe?
I met with Mr. Papulius, who described himself as the Director of Operations.
Okay, and what did he tell you?
Well, I was there to share some information with him that we had received, we meaning the police department, regarding the event that he was going to have that evening. Specifically, we had received information from Boston Police that there may be a possible attendance of gang members from Boston that evening at his event. And I wanted to discuss some of the security measures he was intending on employing as a result of that.
Okay. And were you satisfied with the responses he gave you?
Not particularly.
Okay, and why not?
Well, I was concerned about one area, that being the main entranceway. He said that there was going to be 300 to 400 patrons that he was anticipating, and he said that there was 7 security staff on hand that evening.
Okay.
I thought it was maybe insufficient.
Okay. And from what time period were you at Brian's Ivy Hall?
8:44 p.m., roughly, 8:45.
Okay. And that was your only interaction with that establishment that evening?
That's right.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
City, have any questions for the officer?
Did the Director of Ops at Brian's Ivy Hall indicate to you what security precautions were being taken other than the 7 security personnel that would be on site for this event?
Yes, he said that there was 2 people at the door. One was had a clicker type device to monitor the amount of patrons coming in the club. Another individual had a wand type metal detector that was to be used for wanding guests for any metallic objects. He also went on to say that there would be some security staff positioned outside the bathrooms and in front of the stage. He also went on to say that it was a 18 and over event, and that the patrons who were under 21 years of age would receive a check mark on their hand indicating as such, and the patrons that were 21 years of age or older would receive a bracelet. I inquired as to the security, any type of security cameras that he may have on hand, and he said that there were none.
To your knowledge, did they indicate if a metal detector was going to be used at this event?
Yes, he did. He said it was a handheld wand type metal detector, one of them.
In your professional opinion as a police officer, was this one metal detector sufficient for the size of this event?
No, if we're talking about 300 to 400 patrons, just to have one of those handheld one-type metal detectors, I didn't think it was sufficient.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Sergeant Frieda, just for the record, nobody was arrested or charged with any weapons offenses that night, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And there wasn't an incident that involved anybody assaulting a police officer with any kind of weapon that would be detected by a metal detector, correct?
I don't believe so.
So while there's an issue as to whether or not, well, let me ask, the crowd that was coming was attending a rap concert, correct?
Correct.
And the population of the crowd was expected to include people from Boston?
That's the information that we received.
And there was a concern that some of those people coming from Boston might be involved in gang activity?
Correct.
Okay. And there were some arrests that were made that night, correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. And of the people arrested, how many of them were identified as gang members?
I don't know.
Would you agree that there were 0 gang members that were arrested that night?
I can't comment to that. I'm not sure of the, if they were gang members or not.
Okay. So you did share your concern that some of the people who go to rap concerts might be in gangs?
It's possible.
Okay. And that you were concerned that there might be weapons?
Correct.
Okay. And they had a plan in place to check for weapons?
They did.
And you didn't have anybody arrested for using any kind of weapon that night, correct?
Not to my knowledge, no.
He already asked that.
All right. So I'll let it go with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Yeah.
One question. Sergeant, based on your experience as a police officer, were the security arrangements taken by Brian's Ivy Hall sufficient for an event of this size?
Objection is to relevance.
Yeah, but this,
You're on a charge that they didn't have enough of the plan.
he can answer the question.
I thought it was insufficient.
Thank you.
Okay. Is Officer Leganis? Did you again? You introduce yourself once again for the record?
Officer Nick Laganis.
Were you on duty that night?
Yes, I was.
Can you explain to me what happened, or what you observed?
In summary, based on, and picking back from Sergeant Jafrida, based on the information that we've got gathered from Boston PD, we determined it'd be necessary to basically come in and out of the establishment throughout the course of the night. At the particular moment of the fight, I was stationed, if you were to come through the stairway, at the far left corner to see the entirety of the club, along with Officer Rojas. At this point, there was approximately, I want to say approximately 100 people on stage, approximately 300 throughout the entire club, 300 to 400, I can't say. They ended the music, and whoever had the mic at the time demanded all patrons off the stage. No patrons moved. He again demanded over and over multiple times, nobody moved. And you can tell at that point tension started to rise through the person with the mic and the patrons. And at one point you could see what appeared to be ice being thrown from the stage off somebody because it was verbal yelling from the bottom to the top.
Who was the ice coming from? Was it an entertainer, or was it a patron?
I can't say for sure.
Okay, because I think in your police report, you say one of the DJs, after we observed one of the musicians throw objects which appeared to be ice. So was it a musician or was it not?
I can't say 100%,
Okay.
but I can say that it came from around whoever was holding a mic at that time. So.
Okay.
At that point, someone threw something from the stage, and in return, someone threw something that appeared to be a cup. That's when scuffles broke out throughout the dance floor. When we went into the middle of the floor, the bouncers, as well as other patrons, pointed to what seemed to be the person who started everything. This person had his shirt off, and he was flailing his arms. He was very uncooperative. At this point, I was able to grab contact with both arms to escort him out of the premises. At this point, OC was sprayed, not by me, and that's when fights broke out. People panicked, and fights broke out throughout the stage.
Any questions? No. City, have any questions?
Officer Leganis, based on your observations of that night, how many patrons were on the stage when the fights broke out?
Approximately 100.
And you observed ice being thrown from the stage into the patrons on the dance floor, correct?
Yes.
Approximately how many, in your opinion, how many fights broke out that night that you observed?
Onto the street as well, or just into the club?
That you observed?
I want to say upwards to, maybe 10.
And how long did it take to clear Brian's Ivy Hall of patrons?
Of all patrons, I left after about, I want to say probably about a half an hour, which then the street took a lot longer to disperse everyone from the streets.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I just asked, also, Leganis, did you say that the bouncers and the security staff assisted you by pointing to the individual who had started an altercation?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Did they in any way obstruct you from doing your job that night?
No, they didn't. They requested my assistance multiple times, so.
All right. And how many officers were present at Brian's Ivy Hall that night?
Approximately 6 between our unit itself and downtown patrol.
Okay. And was there a special unit that was placed there that night out of concern for gang members?
Yes, there was.
And how many people were involved in that?
One is 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5 at the time. Okay. I believe there was 4 of our unit in at the time, and 2 came in afterwards, after the fight broke out.
Okay. When the OC, the pepper spray, was released, you said that that created a lot of turmoil on the floor?
Yes, it did.
When you describe fights, do you include that to mean people who are pushing and shoving?
Pushing, shoving, punching.
Okay. What was the general reaction to the release of OC spray in the crowd?
In one word, I'd say panic.
Okay. And that is when you say the fights broke out?
Well, the fight broke out prior to that.
Well, the individual fight, correct?
The individual, what seemed to be the individual fight where they pointed at the one guy.
Okay.
That one person was escorted out, and that was the end of that incident.
All right, but the rest of the fights broke out with the OC spray?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Officer Rojas? Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Officer Guillermo Rojas.
Could you describe what happened that evening?
Yep, I was working normal patrol. At that time, I worked from midnight to about 8 o'clock in the morning. I worked car 8 east side of the city, which means that this specific location fell within my specific jurisdiction. So I was there. I had heard the previous intel that there was going to be a rap concert and that there were going to be some possible gang activity. So I stopped by, I spoke with Officer Leganis and several other officers, and I stuck around to make sure that everything was okay in my area.
Did you observe a fight?
Afterwards, yes. Just as Officer Leganis explained, there was some confrontation between the entertainers who were on the stage and people who were on the dance floor. I did observe a cup of what I recall as being ice being thrown into the crowd and an item being thrown back at the stage, and that's when an initial fight erupted.
Okay. Any questions for Officer Rojas? Does the city have any questions?
Officer Rojas, when did you respond to Brian's Ivy Hall? At what time?
It was probably around 12:45, 12:50.
Mm-hmm. And could you please describe the situation inside Brian's Ivy Hall with patrons combative?
I wouldn't say they were combative initially, but it was a very large crowd, and some of them were involved in I guess some unpleasant activities, but I wouldn't say that they were combative to begin or anything like that.
But there was disturbance and disorder inside Brian's Ivy Hall, is that correct?
It was very busy. There was some disorder, but I wouldn't say it was combative.
Did you make any arrests that night?
I did. I made one arrest at the end of the entire incident.
Could you please describe the details regarding that arrest?
After we're trying to regain control of the nightclub, and everybody had left, there were a few females who were refusing to leave the female restroom. I was called over by one of the security employees to help escort this female out. This female refused to move. I tried to force her out of the bathroom, and at one point she fell over. That ended the incident right there. After we were outside, the same female came up to me and began a confrontation with me. She began to get very vocal and started spitting as she spoke towards me. I told her to cease her actions. She refused to listen, continued spitting, which I felt then that was intentional, and she was arrested for the assault and battery on a police officer and disorderly conduct, as she was not letting patrons continue to leave the area and causing a disturbance.
Did the woman that you arrest direct any profanity at you?
She used some profanity.
Thank you.
I'll just ask Officer Rojas, the woman that you arrested, was she doing any of this with the assistance of or permission of the employees at Bryans Ivy Hall?
What part, sir?
Her refusing to leave, was that at the request or direction of any employees, or did you intervene at the request of the employees?
I intervened at the request of the employees.
Okay. And when she was outside and combative, that was on Merrimack Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Sorry.
And that's when she decided to spit on you?
Yes.
Was that in any way encouraged or allowed or somehow brought about by anybody at Bryans? Or any of the employees at Bryans Ivy Hall?
Was she...
Were they cheering her on? Were they saying spit on him? Were they doing anything to encourage her to misbehave outside?
On behalf of Bryans, no.
Redirect.
Sure.
To be clear, Officer Rojas, she was in Bryans Ivy Hall, though, when she engaged in her disruptive behavior. Is that correct?
She was, on my second encounter with her, we were standing a few feet away from the entrance of Bryans Ivy.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, when she began her criminal behavior, she was outside on the street?
Outside on the street, on a sidewalk.
Officer Pappas?
Just one other question for Officer Rojas.
Sure.
Officer Rojas, in your opinion as a police officer, was the woman that you arrested intoxicated?
Yes.
What leads you to that conclusion?
There was slurring from our first interaction. There was an obvious slur in her speech. She couldn't maintain her own balance, and I believe there was an odor of alcohol coming from her person.
Thank you.
Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Good evening, Officer Charles S. Papa Constantino, City of Lowell Police Department.
Okay. Could you describe what happened that evening?
Yes, is it okay if I pick up after?
Right.
Okay, so I was upstairs in the establishment. Somebody had issued OC pepper spray. Patrons then became combative. I did observe a male to break a window, which is over the street on Merrimack Street. Having seen that male, he used an unidentified object. Having seen that male, I then made my way over through the crowd, placed that male in custody. As I did so, upon trying to drag him back through the dance floor to the door to remove him from that element, I noted another male yelling, screaming, inciting a crowd. I then placed that male into custody as well for disorderly conduct, placed him under arrest, and removed them from the premises as quickly as possible.
How long have you been a police officer?
Approximately 9 years, sir.
Okay. And have you dealt with these establishments downtown before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And have you dealt with crowds of this size in an establishment?
Yes, I'm sure that I have at some point.
Did you, with your experience, did you feel that the security at Bryans Ivy Hall was sufficient?
When you say sufficient, you mean?
Did they have enough people working, controlling the crowd? Was there enough crowd control by Bryans Ivy Hall?
To be honest with you, Commissioner, I don't know how many people they had exactly.
Okay. All right. So, but you went to the police academy and you were trained on how to control crowds, et cetera?
Yes.
Okay. And were there enough employees at Bryans Ivy Hall there to control the crowd? of that size that evening, in your opinion?
Again, I'm not really sure how many employees were there and how many employees would be needed for a crowd that size. I'm sorry,
No, that's okay. That's an honest answer. That's fine. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, I'm working on how to formulate it. So, this was a rap band that was performing. Does a rap band constitute an entertainment that's more likely to have difficulties associated with it than a different kind of band?
I really can't answer that question fairly. However, I can tell you that the intelligence that I received, or the information that I received, was that the Boston Police Department had contacted the Lowell Police Department, and I was informed of this through a supervisor, and informed the Lowell Police Department that there was a large influx of what they believed to be gang members coming from their city into the city of Lowell to see this particular actor at this, or this particular entertainer at this particular venue.
Thank you.
Your opinion, officer, did the situation in Bryans Ivy Hall constitute a danger to yourself and your fellow officers?
Yes.
Please indicate why.
Well, with the large amount of people in there, at that point when they started to become combative, the OC pepper spray was issued. People then were combative. Some people were fleeing for the door. However, you have approximately, I think there was maybe 6 or 7 officers upstairs. There was approximately, I want to say, 300 patrons. Now you're in chaos, you see. I don't know these people. They're not from around here. We were outnumbered. Things could have turned really bad, or they could have been much worse, of course. You have 7 police officers in comparison to 300 plus people in a chaotic scene. You have to remember, with those 7 officers, there are 7 loaded firearms that can be and have been in the past, not in the city, but in other places, and we've all seen the YouTube videos that have been removed from police officers and could be used. So, having said that, that in and of itself makes it an extreme danger.
And officer, how many egress and points are there in Bryans Ivy Hall?
I believe there are 2.
Please describe them.
There is one that goes from the main entrance up the stairs, and then there is one to the rear, which has a flight of stairs going down the back, I believe.
Of these 2, which egress points are patrons allowed to enter and exit?
Primarily for the purpose of coming in and out as patrons.
Correct.
To the main entrance, which is the one that leads out to Merrimack Street.
So 1.
For that purpose, yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. I would just ask, I saw in your report that the one male who had broken the window, you had opined that he broke it so that he could breathe in response to the pepper spray?
I believe so. I believe that's why he did I believe that's why he did it.
Okay.
That's what he had told me as I was pulling him away, so.
Okay, but he was pulled away, he was facing toward the window?
Correct.
Okay. And the other person who was inciting the crowd was yelling about the spray? Or
yelling, he was swearing, it seemed to me that, it appeared to me that he was initiating the crowd.
Oh, let me ask, had he been doing this before the spray incident?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you see him doing any of this before somebody deployed spray?
No, had I noticed that prior to that, I would have surely taken him into custody for disorderly conduct and removed him from that venue.
And at any point, did anybody from Bryans Ivy Hall interfere with your efforts?
No.
Were they helpful in getting the crowd out of the building?
They may have been. To be honest with you, Counselor, I was so fixated with these 2 gentlemen right here that I did not pay attention to what really anybody else was doing, and I know that sounds absurd, but I was fixated on taking these 2 into custody and removing them from this establishment.
I'm going to ask, since the issue was raised by the city solicitor's office, have you ever worked any details at the Songus Arena?
I have.
And what kind of events have you worked at those?
Hockey games, concerts, things of that nature.
And what's the capacity at the Songus Arena?
Oh, I don't know. I'd say in the thousands.
Okay. When you work, how many police officers are generally on that detail?
Depending on what depending on what it might be in the size of the crowd that's expected. Obviously for a UMass hockey game or, I don't know, Disney, or say a Disney on Ice venue or something like that, there's probably gonna be substantially less police officers versus if they're having some kind of, I don't know, say the Dropkick Murphys or a band like that.
I was actually gonna use them as an example. Have you ever worked a Dropkick Murphys concert?
I have not.
Okay. What concerts have you worked?
I don't recall off the top of my head. There's been quite a few that I've worked.
Do you know if there's a staffing ratio for a number of police providing security detail to patrons for those concerts?
I do not make those decisions, so I don't know how they would figure that out.
Okay. And you said you had at least 7 police officers there with you that night?
I believe so.
And there were at least 7 security officers there that night?
Again, I don't know how many, but if that's what you had on the schedule, yes, I'd say so.
And to your knowledge, how soon before patrons arrived did the police department relay this information to Brian's Ivy Hall that there might be gang members coming from Boston?
I've got it a few hours before.
Okay. That was before you went on shift?
No, I was actually already working. I worked that shift. I believe I was working from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. that night. I believe it was a Saturday, correct?
And you know how many people were arrested? I mean, you arrested 2 people inside. Correct?
Yes.
And fair to say about half the people who were arrested outside?
I don't know, sir. I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
Now, I know that the person that you arrested at the window in your report, you said he was resisting arrest, laying on the ground, putting his arms under him, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was he doing this with any encouragement or assistance or directive from Brian's Ivy Hall staff?
No, he was not.
Okay. So they weren't aiding him or allowing this to happen?
No, sir. All right, thank you.
Redirect one question.
Yeah.
Sir, in your experience as a police officer in your years, have you ever recalled a situation when involving large events where law enforcement agencies have informed you of gang-related activity related to that entertainment event?
I don't recall off the top of my head, sir, and I apologize for that. It may or may not have happened in the past, but I don't recall.
But you don't recall a previous situation where a law enforcement agency would have informed you of gang-related activity at a large entertainment event in the city?
I believe there was I believe we did get a notice for a party that was being thrown at an establishment with that was being held by a male from Lowell. Was held at an establishment at another part of the city, where we did get intel from, I think it was the Manchester, New Hampshire Police Department, that this party had been, it was not allowed to take place in their city, and that it was going to be held in Lowell at a particular establishment, and that some unsavory characters were due to attend.
So this is not a common notification?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Thank you.
Just to redirect, since we're on the Dropkick Murphys, I know that they have a faithful following, but they also have a large skinhead following. Isn't that true?
I believe they do.
Okay. And when their concerts are being held here in Lowell, do you guys put on extra security out of fear of that?
To be honest with you, it's been so long ago that there was a Dropkick Murphys concert, but I would, if I can make an assumption, which I hate to do, I would assume that there would be extra security. Like I said, based on, in comparison to Disney on Ice, I'm sure you're going to have a lot more police presence in a situation like that.
Objection relevancy. He's not aware of that.
That's fine. All right, is Officer Lorenzi here?
No, he's not.
No, he's not? Okay. How about Officer Gatto?
No, the officers who you haven't heard from yet who are here are Sergeant Peasley and Lieutenant Hodgson.
All right, Sergeant Peasley?
Good evening.
Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Sure, Sergeant David Peasley with the Lowell Police Department.
All right, could you describe your observations that evening?
Sure, I was a street supervisor assigned to the midnight shift that night. Basically, I was monitoring the radio, and I heard the call for officer needs assistance about 2 o'clock in the morning or so. I just continued to monitor the call because I knew there was a lieutenant downtown, and I still had the responsibility of the rest of the city. And it wasn't until I heard Priority Tone, I believe, come over, or at least all cars respond to downtown, that it was that point that I headed down there.
Okay. And did you make your way into Brian's Ivy Hall?
No, I didn't. I kind of set up a command post, I guess, if you want to call it, at Merrimack and John Street. I kind of felt that it was my duty to handle what was going on outside in the streets.
And how was the crowd dispersing?
By the time I got there, the crowd was already in the streets. It was rowdy. Yeah.
It was rowdy. Okay. All right. Questions from the city?
Sergeant, how many units were called to respond to Brian's Ivy Hall?
We had every Lowell car respond, which is 11 cars, and I can't recall if we had any portables on at the time. I'd have to look at the daily detail to confirm that. But that would be in addition to what we consider called the downtown portable, which is down there anyways, and the gang unit, or the response unit, which is, I think they said 4 to 5 officers were working that night.
Mm-hmm. And in your experience, did this call for all of the officers affect coverage of police in the rest of the city of Lowell?
Yeah, the call like that leaves the city vulnerable. It brings everybody into one small section of the city and leaves the rest of the city without coverage.
To the best of your knowledge, were there any other criminal activity that occurred in the city at this time?
Honestly, when the Priority Tone came out, it was my intention to clear it out as quickly as possible to get the cars back out into the city. In that general vicinity, I know we were getting multiple calls for fights in the John Street parking garage. I think we did get a call for a stabbing at Market and Shattuck, I believe it was, but it was unfounded. We never found a victim or suspect. We were getting calls for large groups on Middle Street by the Village Smokehouse at the time. But in terms of outside of the downtown area, I think the city the dispatch at that time held any emergency calls, so I don't remember any emergency calls being dispatched, but the regular non-emergency calls for service, weren't dispatched at that time.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I would just say, it's fair to say then that any calls that came in were related to the downtown area that night?
Yes. Okay. At that time.
Okay.
Yeah, not the whole night.
But during that time, any calls were related to the downtown area?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And various streets within the downtown?
Correct. Yeah.
Where all the cars had been, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, fair to say the police were within a block or two of any
Couple
calls
blocks,
coming in?
yeah.
Okay. And did you observe any misbehavior or any wrongdoing on the part of any employee at Brian's Ivy Hall or Beck's Inc.?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Last but not least, Lieutenant Hodgson. You can introduce yourself for the record.
Lieutenant James Hodgson, Lowell Police Department.
Can you state your observations from that evening?
Yes, that night I was in charge of the community response unit. I was actually patrolling the cruiser downtown when I heard the call one morning in radio traffic for a large fight in Brian's Ivy Hall. I responded to that location. When I got there, it was most of the crowd had cleared out. There were still people that were clearing out, but the combatants at that point were already placed under arrest in the process of either being escorted or were already down on the street waiting for the wagon.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. Do you have a process or procedure for coordinating with the, for instance, Brian's Ivy Hall with their director of operations and their security, their bouncers, to make this a coordinated affair, or is it a two-pronged approach?
It's basically on a case-by-case basis. If we receive information, whether it's Brian's Ivy Hall or other establishments, we'll usually send a supervisor to that establishment and make them aware of any intelligence information received within our own department or from other offices or from outside agencies. That way, we have a cooperative effort with them.
Thank you.
No questions.
I would just ask, Sergeant Hodgson, you said that The combatants had already been cleared by the time you arrived?
Some were still there, they're in the process of being escorted, but when I arrived late, the majority of the establishment was cleared out, and they were still moving patrons out of there. Most of the people were in the street at that time when I was there.
Okay, and you were responding to the all-call?
Yes.
Okay. No other questions?
Attorney Weicker, is there anyone that you want to have testify?
I would ask the Director of Operations to take the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Demetrius Papoulias, Director of Operations, Bryans Ivy Hall.
And just for the record, what time were you approached by the Lowell Police Department that day?
As to inform me about the night?
Yes.
About 8:30, 8:45.
And what time did your patrons start arriving?
The doors opened up at 10. I would say most of the patrons started arriving after 10:30, close to 11 o'clock.
Were you able to get any additional security during that hour and a half of notice that you had?
Yes, I did.
And how many extra people were you able to bring in?
I had a total of 10 gentlemen on the floor walking the area of where the entertainment was taking place. I had a doorman downstairs, I had another person with the clicker, and I had a gentleman doing this security one.
Was anybody arrested or any weapons confiscated that night?
No.
Did you have any problems at the door that night?
From what I recall, no problems were brought to my attention.
Where were you when the incident on the third floor broke out?
I was present on the floor the whole night.
And when would you say that the majority of the panic, pushing, and shoving began?
Right after 1 o'clock when the pepper spray went off.
And how many people were arrested prior to that?
I asked for help for one person. I don't know if he was arrested or not, and we escorted out a couple other people for smoking cigarettes or whatever, but other than that, I don't remember anybody else getting arrested.
And about how long does it take to get 300 people down and out of the establishment?
Usually I do last call at 1:30, lights go on, and by 1:45, 10 minutes of 2 at the latest, the establishment is clear of all patrons.
All right, and on that night, how long did it take for everybody to get out after the pepper spray?
Take the pepper spray, and by 1:30, everybody was out, lights were on, staff was still in there, a couple of people that were friends of the staff were still there, just to make sure everybody was okay.
What was your plan again for people who were 18 and under 21?
We put, if you were over 21, you had a colored wristband on your left hand. And if you're under the age of 21, you had an X marked on your hand. So if you didn't have a wristband on your hand, there was no way you could get an alcoholic beverage from us. And I brought that to the attention of my bartender staff. There was about 4 of them, 2 waitresses, 2 beer tub girls, and 1 girl that walks around and serves shots.
What would you say that your relationship is like with Lowell Police Department when they approach you about concerns?
Oh, very cooperative. I was very open to their suggestions. I told them what my plans were for the night. I know some of them personally myself, and everything. I asked for their assistance sometimes during the night because some people wanted removed, and they helped me out.
After your communication with them, did you discuss where they would be stationed inside?
No.
Where the gang response unit would be stationed?
I didn't know if the gang unit was going to be inside. I saw them inside around 11:30. They made their presence. They were there around 11:30 on the dance floor. And they helped me direct me to some points where stuff needed to be cleared up.
Did any of your individuals suffer any injuries that night? Any of your employees?
Nobody.
Okay. Were you people able to get everybody out during the panic?
Yes.
And about how long do you think the panic lasted upstairs?
I would say 15 minutes. I mean, total panic, probably like 10 minutes, but after that, everything was under control. People dispersed.
Okay. And do you have anything else you'd like to add?
To my knowledge, I've been doing this for 15 years. I think my security staff of 10 gentlemen on the floor and 3 at the door downstairs, and plus myself walking the floor. And I did work hand in hand with the police officers who pointed out the gentleman that broke the window. I actually was the one that assisted him in grabbing him, and they got him arrested. But for the most part, I thought we were working hand in hand until the pepper spray went off. That's when everything went out of control.
You said you have 15 years' experience in the industry. Where else have you worked?
I was the general manager of Whiskey Park Midnight Oil Corporation in Boston, Mass. at the Park Plaza Hotel.
And what were your security arrangements there?
It was more of a lounge, but the security arrangements were 6 gentlemen for the whole night, a doorman, a couple of floor people.
And what's the capacity of that place?
It was 315.
Would you say it's reasonably similar in size to Brian's Ivy Hall?
No.
Okay, what's the difference?
The way it's laid out, it was laid out as a lounge. There was more tables, more chairs, more booths, more sitting area.
More obstacles?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And where else have you worked besides there?
I was the manager of Rumor nightclub in Boston on 100 Warrington Street. I started there in 1998. I worked there till 2001, where then I went to Whiskey Park.
And what did you do there as far as being general manager and security arrangements?
Where?
Rumor?
Yeah. Just make sure that everything was properly staffed for security, did the money at the end of the night with the staff, the cash deposits at the end of the night.
Did you, in any of your years, have any other instances where crowds reacted to pepper spray?
Yes,
And what were those reactions like from other crowds?
the same.
And were those crowds attending rap concerts or other?
It was different events. It was just generally DJ music, not per se rap music, but the pepper spray did cause a problem.
Would you say that your crowd reacted normally to a crowd that's exposed to pepper spray?
At Brian's Ivy?
Brian's Ivy?
Personally, when it went off, yeah, everybody just wanted to get out, and then people just started getting in other people's way, and
All right. Thank you.
Who hired this Chief Keefe?
I don't know, his, the promoter is, what's, Lee? Six-pack, what's it? He goes by the name of Six-Pack. He's Leon is his first name. He does Thursday, he's a promoter for Thursday nights at Brian's Ivy Hall.
And what's his last name?
I do not know, sir.
You hire an individual, you don't know his name?
He's been there for a while, sir.
How do you, well, even more reason you should know his name, right?
That would make sense.
You're the director of
Yes.
operations, and you have had
His
this guy
name-
work there for a while.
Yes.
And you don't know his name.
His name's Leon. He goes by the name Six-Pack. He's a promoter.
Well, when you make a check payable to him, how do you make it payable?
I do not take care of that.
Oh, who does?
Mr. Hayhurst.
Mr. Harris, who do you make the check payable to?
I don't make a check payable to him.
Who do you make it payable to?
He's contracted, he takes the door money, and he's a subcontractor below us. I don't pay him.
Who pays him?
He makes his money off the door money.
And who, well,
So the money he collects it as a cover
who
charge.
collects the door money?
He would collect the money as a cover charge.
He collects the money?
He pays the artist, he does it as a contractor himself.
Well, I thought you're the owner of the establishment.
Yep.
And you're the manager.
The manager on record, yep.
You're the manager on record, yeah? And if you charge a cover charge, that money's supposed to be going to you, correct?
In this situation, as a contractor, he's the contractor. He's a subcontractor under me.
So you pay someone to take money at the door?
He pays somebody.
He pays somebody.
He pays someone to collect his money. He pays for the artist. He's in charge of all the entertainment. He would be a subcontractor under myself.
All right, so the person that works, who works the door the night of the event? Who works the door?
Well, as staff, as for our staff, or as for his?
Well, we'll start with you first.
We would have our staff, our security, that would be checking IDs.
We'll be checking IDs. Okay, and then they check IDs.
We have
and-
another gentleman that would be doing the wand as well, the metal detector, to make sure there's no weapons.
And they're an employee of Brian's Ivy Hall too?
Correct.
Okay. And then after they get wanded and ID checked, then what happens?
Then they would pay the cover charge to one of the employees of the promoters. Like,
Okay, and how
so
much is that cover charge?
It depends on the night.
Is it posted?
Yes.
Where?
right at the door. Every night, whatever changes, we post it at the door.
Okay.
It's up to them. They pay, like I said, as a subcontractor, they pay the entertainer,
Yep.
and they pay that.
Okay, and this Chief Keefe, have you ever heard of him before?
No.
Okay.
They often bring artists to me. I'm not really into that scene. I don't know, what's going on. My clientele, it's what they want. If that's what they're deemed for whoever the person is at that time, I'm not sure. It's really not I'm a country guy. I don't.
All right, but you're the manager.
Correct.
All right, so you should know who's coming into your staff.
Oh, I know who, when they tell me, yeah. If they tell me who's coming in, I would YouTube, look who it is. And, I don't just let them bring anybody. I see who.
Okay.
But I mean, also I see if it's going to warrant the crowd, if I believe it's worth, the investment on their end or on my end.
So did you, when he told you that he was gonna bring in Chief Keefe, did you go look at YouTube and who he was?
Yeah, but it still didn't ring a bell to me. And also, this event was on a Thursday night. With Thursdays for us, I'm usually that busy anyway. So I didn't think it was going to warrant the crowd to any extent until the stuff was brought to our attention. I didn't think much of it because we bring random local artists in on Thursday nights as it is anyway. I didn't think it would be any different, especially with me not knowing who he was. I didn't think it was a big deal.
Okay, and then when you were informed by the Lowell police that there were maybe possibly some issues with this guy, what steps did you take?
I actually wasn't informed. I didn't even know Dimitri met with the Lowell police. When I was informed, I believe, Dimitri took over as his job, like director of operations, like he did. He stepped up and he brought a couple extra guys in. Now he was aware of what was going to happen that night, or allegedly was going to happen.
Well, what's the chain of command at Brian's Abbey Hall?
Well, I would be the owner,
Yep.
and then Dimitri and the manager, and Dimitri would work under me as the director of operations.
Right, but you're the manager of record.
I'm the manager
So
of
the
record.
buck stops with you.
100%.
Okay. So did Dimitri inform you about what the Lowell police told him?
No, he didn't until later that night when I asked him about it. I mean, I leave enough responsibility with him, and I trust him enough that, he can, I am on premises every night. I'm there as the manager.
Okay. But he never informed you that the Lowell police came until after?
Nope. He took upon himself, his job as the director of operations, to bring in more people.
So what did you think when the gang unit came in?
Well, I talked with them briefly. I wish they would have been a little more proactive and met with us when they did show up with 10 to 12 guys. There was, say, 6 upstairs and 6 outside. As if, honestly, this is a regular night for us. 300 to 400 people would be a regular night. I would guess that if it was up to me and they would approach me when they did show up with that many people, I would have asked them to stay outside, let us take care of inside, and we'll do like we normally do, ask you for assistance if we need it. That's what I think would have happened. I think with the police presence on the dance floor, in everybody's face, I think there was some tension already, and with the pepper spray just added to that tension.
So you're blaming this fight on the police?
No, not at all. I actually think they were very cooperative with what they did. When they stepped in, I actually think every one of their stories was actually very accurate, because I was standing right there. I actually believe they were very, very helpful with that situation. So no, I do not blame them. I would not put blame on them. I think their presence put people on edge. I think the police that were there did an excellent job, actually. And I was standing there with Mr. Constantino, Papa Constantino, when he actually did the same thing. The kid broke the window. I was standing there as well.
Were there fights at the Brian's Abbey Hall that night?
I did not witness any fights that weren't initiated by the Lowell police.
That weren't initiated by the Lowell
There was
police?
that when the ice was thrown, the Lowell police that were present on the floor started grabbing people, and I still didn't witness any fights. I don't believe there was any injuries. I don't believe there was any weapons found. So I still don't believe, but there was definitely, after pepper spray, there was definitely commotion, people trying to get it.
Did you review the police reports at all?
I did.
Okay, and did you see the police report from Officer Lorenzi, where he talks about how there was a fight between 2 women in front of the stage?
Yeah, actually, I was witness that too. It wasn't actually a fight. There actually was some, one woman bumped into the other one. I was actually standing right there, and I was surprised that, if anything, they actually did escort her out, and they didn't arrest her till outside when there was profanity thrown. They actually escorted her out without any punches thrown. There was no fight inside the place. There was one woman that did bump into another, spilled the drink, and the police were there, grabbed her and escorted her out, which I thought was a little excessive. And then outside, and I actually approached the officer later and asked her why he arrested her, and he said she made some profanity marks to him, and then he ended up arresting her.
You can ask, hold on, let me just, did you feel that the security that night was sufficient for the crowd that you had?
Yes, I think that we usually do the exact same thing. I think there was actually an excessive amount of people on because that's a normal crowd we deal with on a regular basis. We usually have it under control. We know that there's no weapons there. Well, we assume there is because we do the check at the door. We don't serve any bottles. We don't put any of our patrons or any of our employees at risk. Same thing with the police, and if they step in, we're glad to assist them. We all assisted them right there. I think there was plenty of my staff that was there. It's a normal crowd we would deal with on a Friday or Saturday night. I didn't think it was any different. And we did step up some security.
Do you use the wand?
We use the metal detector wand, yes, on the way in.
So every night you use the wand?
Yes, every night we're open, yep. And we don't serve bottles, so there's no objects really that pose a threat to us or anybody in the club.
No, does the city have any questions?
Just a few questions. If the promoter was a subcontractor, as you say, who did Brian's Ivy Hall contract with?
It would have been that Leon six-pack, and that was an exclusive night that he promoted there.
If you didn't know that there was gang-related activity involved with this performance artist, why didn't you inquire why the LPT gang unit was in your premises?
Well, I'm actually, I would say friends are, with a lot of them where if they would approach me, I am there on premises all the time. And when they walk up to me and tell me their presence is there for whatever reason, and then I would have talked to Dimitri, and he would have told me the exact meeting he had earlier, and he beefed up his security. So at that point, I would have known.
But you didn't discuss security arrangements with your operations officer prior
We
to this
discussed it
event?
early in the day. We were expecting somewhat of a crowd, not exactly related to the gang. So knowing that crowd, he would have brought in his extra staff that we would have normally had on hand.
And he made no mention to you of his conversation with Sergeant Gilfried?
It would have been before that. It would have been during the day. We wouldn't have a meeting at 9 o'clock at night for our security that comes in at 10. We would have met either that Friday or Thursday morning. I mean, the Wednesday or Thursday morning, depending on, the day before.
I think what everybody needs to realize, and I think maybe there's some confusion on the behalf of my brother from the law department, that the timing was for the information being released to Bex Inc. was approximately an hour and a half to an hour and 15 minutes before the start of the performance. While Officer Papa Constantino testified that he knew several hours earlier, the information didn't get down to the end user, the person who needed it most, until the very last minute. And they were only able to bring in a few extra people when that happened. So the Director of Operations was able to bring in the extra security, albeit not a lot more, but we did go from 7 to 10 people, which is, in excess of 40% increase in security staff. And they did have an additional 7 police officers present on the floor and another 5 or 6 outside.
Anybody?
Additional question. When you said that you contracted with a gentleman, what was this gentleman's name?
I think we've covered this, Counselor.
Well, just answer the question.
Leon.
What's his last name?
Leon
I think
Sixpack.
we've covered this again, but
Leon
I
Sixpack.
don't have the paperwork in front of me. He goes by six-pack, that's what we call him. I can look into paperwork, but I didn't know this would be an issue right now, find out someone's name at this point. Wasn't sure.
So did you make a contract?
Yes, I have paperwork from him, yes.
And
I have paperwork from him that night as well, too, for that individual, yes.
So you don't know who you contracted with then?
objection. I think he's already identified, and, members of the commission, I'm going to ask, please step in here at some point. The testimony has already been very clear that he contracted with a person. He knows him as Leon Sixpack. That is the name he goes by. That is his performance name. That is his repertoire, so to speak. He has a written contract. He wasn't told that he was going to need to be able to produce it tonight. And again, we're not dealing with the issue of what happened that night. Now we're just going to be picking on somebody because he doesn't know last names of the last person he spoke with on December 20th.
I just have a question about the cover charge. Do you keep receipts of any cover charge?
They would have. We make sure we give receipts. If the cover charge that night, I'm responsible for, yes. We have a ticket system.
You have receipts of the cover charge for that night?
We would have had, that night, no, because it would have been contracted by him. But if there was a night where I'm responsible for it, yes. We have a ticketed system in place that we keep that on file, yes.
Is there anybody else you want to have testify Attorney Weicker?
No, at this point, I don't think we need to put anybody else up.
The city would just ask that Captain Webb bring up a matter that has been brought to the attention by the testimony.
Sure.
Just a few points of information that might be helpful to the commission. It's my understanding that the promoter in question is the same promoter who was involved at the incident at Fortunato's last February. Also, as far as the issue of turning over the door receipts or the cover charge to a promoter, it's my understanding from speaking to investigators at the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission that that's a violation of the Liquor Control Act, and that it turns over a beneficial interest in the license to a third party. And also, as far as the performer who was scheduled to appear that night, Chief Keefe, who apparently was the attraction that these reported gang associates may be coming to see. It's also my understanding that, in fact, he did not appear that night, so perhaps that contributed to the atmosphere of disorder at the end of the evening.
Okay. I guess, in my, after hearing all the testimony, you know, I think that there's definitely violations of the rules and regulations of the License Commission. You know, there was a disorder.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yeah.
I may.
Yeah.
We received no allegation of any wrongdoing, and we're not here for proceeding with any alleged wrongdoings. It was just simply informational, is what we were told. If there's going to be a disciplinary hearing, we'd like at least the charges and the evidence for them. This was to discuss what happened, I think more or less to plan on which way to go forward in a better manner. But with this proceeding, it's been made very clear that information was given to the establishment at the very last minute that they might need more security because there was a rumored intelligence from Boston that gang members may attend. There's been no evidence whatsoever that any gang members did attend. Yet more security was brought in anyway, and a gang unit was brought in. So while this is out there, and I know it sounds very scary, and if somebody were to play the innuendo game of, well, we heard that there might be a gang member present, therefore this place needs to be a bad place. There just needs to be something a little bit more concrete, not the game of implication. It must be true because we heard a rumor it was going to happen, even though we didn't arrest anybody who was affiliated with any of this or establish any information that they actually did, in fact, attend. I get that there are rumors. There's always intelligence. My own experience in the military, we like to say that military intelligence is sometimes an oxymoron. It doesn't always pan out. And in this case, we don't have any information that it did pan out. What we have was a fight that occurred and a crowd that went out of control when pepper spray was released. I know that this is unfortunate. I know that this is bad.
Well, to the solicitor's office, I was going to treat this as a disciplinary hearing. Is that improper to do so?
No, I believe that this is a disciplinary hearing, given the situation that has occurred and given the testimony that's been presented. What's clear here is that, contrary to the testimony of my brother counsel, that there were violations here. It is clear that there was a violent disorder that occurred at these premises that required the approach and the response of multiple police units across town and city lines. And as the testimony of the police officers and the evidence that is presented is clear, there were multiple violations of both Rule 11, in which Bryan's Ivy Hall failed to prevent disorder, and Rule 18, which required that entertainment is permitted so long as it is done not in an offensive or disturbing manner. I think it's clear, given that the evidence that has been presented, that there are multiple violations that require disciplinary action.
If I can respond, I think my brother may not have read some of the rules that apply with respect to entertainment being conducted in an offensive manner. Those generally deal with pornographic or nude displays, and all the case law deals with that. So I don't think there's been any testimony as to that. I
we
mean,
won't worry about
it might be
rule-
just a little off when he says it.
We won't worry about Rule 18 then, but I think that there were violations. I personally think there were violations of Rule 11. I also think there were violations of 204 CMR 20 about the cover charge. I mean, you're required to keep receipts, which they clearly didn't because the promoter kept the money. They turned over beneficial interest to the promoter. Just hear me out, and then I'll give you the. Additionally, Sergeant Jafrida testified that the security was wholly inadequate for this type of event. There were fights, according to the police reports that were submitted. There were fights. So I think that there's enough here to find violations of Rule 11, Rule 1, and the CMRs relative to cover charges. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, my concern, Mr. Chairman, is that, one, there's a lack of notice that there was any disciplinary actions intended with this. I think the notice requirements at least give us, for minimum due process, notice and an opportunity to be heard with respect to the charges that are being alleged now at the conclusion by my brother. With respect to Rule 11, which you'll forgive me, I don't have a copy in front of me because we weren't put on notice that we were going to have to deal with Rule 11. But if there's an allegation that there was a permission of illegal conduct or failures to prevent any such conduct, Rule 11, no disorder permitted. I think the clear testimony of every officer who testified was that no disorder was permitted by any employee or anybody working for or on behalf of Bryans Ivy Hall. In fact, the clear testimony was that the staff assisted in identifying an individual who threw something up on the stage, a shirtless individual who was subsequently taken into custody. The staff assisted in subduing an individual who broke a window to breathe out of it in response to the pepper spray. The staff assisted in clearing a crowd that was pushing and shoving in response to a deployment of oleocapsicum on the dance floor. There's nothing to indicate that there was any permission of any type of activity. And I think some of the law that I may have cited to you requires that when you're evaluating the liability of an institution and what duty they owe to patrons, you're looking at whether or not they're being aware of something, have taken an appropriate step to remedy it. And in this case, being aware of an individual throwing something, they immediately interceded, which is what's required by the law and all the case law. Okay, being aware of pushing and shoving and a crowd and a stampede and everybody reacting badly to a chemical exposure, they assisted in getting them out of there. I don't think there's anything that would go in any way contrary to the law as to what they're obligated to do and what they did do. So I don't think that the trial by surprise tactic of, oh, by the way, you violated Rule 11 is appropriate. I don't think it meets with notice requirements, and I don't think that it's supported in any way, shape, or form by the evidence other than the let's play game of innuendo. Somebody had a fight, therefore it must have been somehow permitted. And I don't think there was. As a matter of fact, they testified that when they were told about a security incident, they brought in extra security, that they worked hand in hand with the police. And even by the police officer's own testimony, they cooperated and assisted. So as with respect to finding that there's any permission of disorder, I don't think that there's any testimony to support it other than the innuendo that may have been thrown at the end, but I would leave it at that.
Yeah. I think that...
If I may respond, just to be clear, due process was provided to my brother counsel, as stated in the notice letter, that the manager, Kevin Hayhurst, was asked, and I quote, to answer to a report of a disturbance that occurred on a licensed premises on December 21st, 2012. And he was also advised, and I quote, you are advised that you have the right to be represented by legal counsel at said hearing. It is clear that due process was provided to Mr. Hayhurst for a disciplinary matter in this.
Okay. All right. Well, You know, it's my feeling anyways, individually, that, you know, a disturbance was permitted by the lack of security. Additionally, the collection of the cover charge by the promoter, I believe, is in violation of the license. So I'll make a motion that we suspend the license for 4 days. And further, that there'll be a condition on the license that Brian's Ivy Hall not utilize a promoter without authorization from the City of Lowell License Commission. And that's my motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. 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 So moved. The suspension, giving you guys the correct appeal period would be from March 28th to March 31st.
And, Mr. Chairman, may I just for the record be clear, we're asking that no promoter whatsoever unless that person is approved in advance by the License Commission?
Yes.
And what availability will the License Commission make in order to approve promoters? Does the License Commission at this point have a system in place for the approval of promoters?
We don't, but we can put conditions on the licenses, so that's a condition that...
I guess what I'm asking is, if there's no condition or no system in place to approve promoters, how do we get a promoter approved?
Well, you have to file an application, and we'll have to have a hearing on it.
All right, and is there an application for a promoter approval that's...
We'll have one to you by Monday.
Okay, and what information will be required by the commission to approve a promoter?
Well, the name, first of all, because that seems to be the issue.
And, Mr. Chairman, in fairness, again, I protest. When a client put on the spot to know somebody other than by their performance name, as opposed to the name on the contract. If he had been told, he could have brought the contract.
Listen, you've sat here before. You know
I understand
how
completely.
it goes. But the name of your employees, you should know, okay? So the name, the address, and what we'll be promoting. And we'll provide a simple form. And like I said, if you feel that there was a lack of due process, or if there's a, you know, that we can't impose that condition on the license, then you can take appropriate measures. Yep, go right ahead.
Is there some danger that you'll be needing permission for a promoter between now and the next meeting of this commission?
I would expect that in the normal course of business, there would be anywhere from 6 to 12 promoters operating on any given weekend within the city of Lowell at any of a number of establishments. So yes, it's likely that it's possible. It's just a routine. Now, I know that the commission has in the past discussed evaluating promoters. I know that it has not happened. If we want to use Beck's Inc. as a test tube, I could certainly understand the desire to do that, but I would at least ask that before this condition be imposed, there be a procedure in place and an opportunity to comply with it, rather than have to abstain from conducting business until such time as the procedures are in place and the applications can be submitted. I'm just asking for the opportunity to not effectively be closed until such time as these rules are put in place.
And with respect to Brother Counsel, there already is a procedure put in place. It's the traditional hearing mechanism that the License Commission already employs.
But I think my brother fails to mention that, for the record, that every other hearing has a standards, an application, a form that can at least be completed. This is something that's new. It's being done on the fly. The law department certainly hasn't put any effort into making a form in advance of tonight, even though I know this has been an issue that's been discussed within the city for, gosh, since February of last year. So it's over a year-old issue, and nothing has been done on it on behalf of the law department. So I don't want it imposed until there's something in place that we can comply with. It's like saying I'm going to put a condition in place with no standards by which it can be evaluated. There's a certain liberty interest that's being curtailed here, or a business interest that's being curtailed, and a property interest that's being curtailed, when a person is being told to comply with a standard that does not yet exist, and it will be determined what that standard is at a later date and time, but until such time you can't conduct business. I would say that, you know, Name a federal agency that gets away with doing that. Even the IRS can't.
All of them.
It's TSA probably.
Madam Solicitor?
I was just going to say that as far as the standard, as I understand it, what the commission has voted upon is merely that that the matter be reviewed before the commission. I don't know that as the chairman was saying, I don't know that an elaborate standard or even a standard is made. It's really to the discretion of the commission, and they will have a hearing with.
Just want to know who it is.
Want to know who it is and probably their background.
Right.
So.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I can see possible collision of requirements here. I think that given the 48-hour notice for our meetings, I'm more than willing to show up here or meet anywhere in the hallway to evaluate something that we could say effective Wednesday, and we could have a form, although I would think that the basic information could be provided in a letter, or we could box top what we do for one-day events.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea. Well, the next hearing is March 14th.
Your next meeting would be
Next meeting, March 14th.
Okay.
And I just asked that between now and March 4th, nothing have to be canceled that's already scheduled?
No, I think that's reasonable. I think that anything that's been I think March 14th is our next meeting, correct? So until March 14th, I'd ask that this be put on the agenda for March 14th. And that condition on the license won't take effect until March 15th. I'll amend that,
And
proper procedure to amend that, the previous vote to say March 15th with the condition on the license.
So moved.
So moved, okay.
And may I also ask, with respect to collateral consequences, if a promoter is disapproved, are they then disapproved for everywhere in the city or just with respect to one business?
We'll have to deal with that when we get to it. I can't answer that right now.
Just when we have to approach the promoters and tell them that they need to submit information, we should probably be letting them know whether or not they're going to be giving up their livelihood and should put their landlords on notice that an incomplete application may result in their being barred from doing future business with the city.
Okay. All right. I don't know what else you want me to say.
It's new and exciting territory, I guess.
We'll see what happens. Next on the agenda.
With respect to License Commission received application by corporation licensee known as QSC Restaurant Management Group, Inc., doing business as Good Times Family Restaurant, James Boot, manager. The all-alcoholic beverage restaurant licensee at 1278 Gorham Street, there being one unnumbered door on north side, one unnumbered door on the east side of the building. First floor, one room for restaurant, one room for kitchen and storage. Request for alteration of premises with respect to expanding the interior of the licensed restaurant. This matter calls for publication of a legal notice in anticipation of a scheduling of a public hearing in which the applicant licensee would be notifying abutters and any church, school, or hospital within 500 feet. I'm told by legal counsel who filed the application on behalf of the licensee, QSC, that Mr. Booton would not be available for any hearing if it could be possibly arranged, so from March the 14th, but first opportune time for him to come before the License Commission to speak on his request would be, if a meeting should be scheduled for March the 28th. If not, March 28th, meeting possibly April 11th. At which point then, if whatever day the hearing could be scheduled, legal notice would be published not less than 10 days prior to that date of hearing. The applicant already has licensee and the counsel, legal counsel already has a copy of the abutters list made available by way of the assessor's office.
So, March 28th? Is that what he wants, is March 28th?
That would be the most earliest opportune time.
Put on for March 28th.
Okay. So then you can anticipate a legal notice being published, I think it's the 15th, the day after our next meeting.
This is a new license or a renewal?
No, sir. This is a licensee of record who is looking to expand the existing restaurant. State law requires the expansion of premises, alteration of premises, by definition, it has to go for public hearing.
Okay.
March 28th.
Okay,
Next on the agenda?
All right, we have a communication from the Superintendent of Police, Kenneth LaValle, dated January 29th, regarding allegation of violations on December the 31st, 2012, regarding Regulation 204 CMR 4.03, regarding licensee offering unlimited number of drinks. The charge against the licensee known as the Middle Street Village Inc., DBA The Village Smokehouse, Alan F. Kaplan, manager, the all-alcoholic beverage restaurant licensee at 9298 Middle Street. That calls for, if the commission wishes to schedule a hearing on this for a disciplinary matter.
March 28th?
Okay. And last but not
Can we,
least,
while the solicitor's here, do you think it would be appropriate to mark another hearing for public need and rollback of hours?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to do that too.
with respect to,
Just in general, the public need, a Village Smokehouse.
oh, okay,
Rollback
that's
of
what you're
hours.
speaking
Yeah.
specifically. So the notice of hearing on this complaint would insert the matter of continuing licensing authority considering a public need to decrease the hours of operation, and this would be the hearing for March 28th.
Yes.
Okay. And there is, just clean up some office business as far as License Commission is concerned. The Winterfest 2013, due to the weather, inclement weather we were dealt with in first weekend in February, the dates for any licenses approved, specifically the tents that were erected for beer and wine concession on Arcan Drive, as well as the John Dock Credit Union parking lot, and the amplification sound permits, all of the dates, which is changed to the weekend of the 22nd, 23rd.
I make a motion that we ratify the items in agenda number 12.
12.
Second. All those in favor say aye? Aye. Aye, so moved.
Okay,
Make a motion to adjourn.
thank you.
All those in favor say aye? Aye, so
Well, if we're
moved.
adjourned, I want to find out the